good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gents. This is boy Casanova from Orlando, Florida, on this awesome international podcast, Good Wine and Great Laughs. The podcast for wine lovers, ladies and gents, summer movies reviews and hot topic discussions, ladies and gents. I am your host, Casanova. If you are new to my YouTube channel, what I do here every Saturday morning at 10 a.m., I have the wine of the day, ladies and gents. I'm going to show up this wine here shortly. I'm going to taste. I'm going to give you some information in the back label. I'm going to let you know what I think about this wine. I'm giving always a rate from 1 to 10. And if you like my review, if you like to try the picture of this wine bottle, it's going to be available on all my social medias: fan base, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. What else? I guess that's all. It's going to be available for you, ladies and gents. So if you want to take your wine store, go ahead and look at it. During the summer movies of June and July, what I do a summer movies review, ladies and gents. So the movies that are coming on the movie theaters or come on the Netflix, Amazon Prime, Apple TV, or whatever. If it's a new movie that came out in the summer, I want to see it. I make a review and then let you know what the movie is all about. And during the rest of the years, what I do, beside the one of the day, I have the hot topic discussions, ladies and gents. And hot topic discussions are always topics that can affect our lives directly or indirectly, ladies and gents. So if you love wine, if you love summer movies reviews, and if you love hot topic discussions, this YouTube channel is for you. If you like the work that I do, ladies and gents, ask only 3 things. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, click on the like button of any video that you watch, and share any of my videos with at least 5 people you know. Please help me to increase the number of subscribers, and I appreciate your support. All right? So, ladies and gents, today is Saturday, March the 28th, 2026, and the weather here in Orlandito is going to be windy with showers developing later. Highs of 87 and lows of 65, ladies and gents. So let's just talk about this wine of the day, ladies and gents. And I have here Marquês de Cárceres. Okay. It's a vintage of 2024. It's a Rueda wine. You say right here, night harvest. According to the label in the back, say right here, Marquês de Cárceres, Verdejo 2024. Intense bouquet, vibrant fruit, and good length. Made from grapes grown in our own vineyards. Say right here, there's a vegan wine. This wine is from Spain. There's that alcohol percent of this wine is a 13.5. Look at the labels to see if anything else. All right. Not too much information beside that, ladies and gents. So let's see what the Marquês de Cárceres is all about. Put this back right here. Marquês de Cárceres. All right, let's get the bouquet of this wine. It's a very little hint of crispness, if that's a word. Okay. This one is very crispy. You definitely can taste the level of acidity on this wine, and also definitely reaching citrus taste. I would say right in the back of my palate, I taste some like lemon very strong in the back on my palate. It's very this is it is a decent white wine for those that like this high level citrus palate. You're definitely going to love this wine. I'm not going to say it's a great wine or it's a terrible wine, ladies and gents. I'm right in the middle. I would say it's a decent wine to drink in a nice early morning on your vacation free time, or right in the middle of the beginning of the evening. You know, I made some beef empanadas right here that I'll be eating these while you watch these videos about the topic of the day, ladies and gents. And I believe it's going to be a good match. So I say this to say that for this particular one, Marquez de Carceres, ladies and gents, I'll give 8.5. Not bad. You know, it's right what I believe this wine should be rated. Now, if you're a lover of this type of wine, more likely you say, yes, Casanova, I love it. To me, it's a 10. And that's okay. Different strokes for different folks. You know, that's why the picture is available for you. Go ahead if you're a lover of white wine and like Spanish wine. Go ahead, the picture's available for you on my social medias. And if you drink this wine and if you love it or hate it, please go back to this episode 12, season 12, episode 12. Make a comment and let me know. And you're still being good friends. Okay? All right, let's talk about the topic of the day. So, I was working on talking about Afro Man, about his corner case in Ohio that he won. You know, I got some good videos, but then something happened that I had to change. So, as you saw on the thumbnail, ladies and gents, we're going to talk about, for season 12, episode 12, United States, Israel, and Argentina voted against recognizing slavery as a crime against humanity, ladies and gents. I'd like to give credits to the DW News, the United Nations YouTube channel, and Roland Martin Unfiltered, ladies and gents. So I'm going to start playing these videos right here. I'm going to eat my delicious empanada. Let's watch this together. At the end of these 3 videos, I'll give you my 2 cents about what I think. All right? So it is showtime.
Nations on slavery.
Therefore, draft resolution A/80/L48 is adopted.
The UN General Assembly has declared that slavery is the gravest crime against humanity, specifically the enslavement of some 12 million Africans and their descendants through the transatlantic slave trade. The resolution put forward by Ghana was harshly criticized by the United States, where tens of millions of descendants of enslaved Africans live today. We'll be talking about that later on. First, I want to hear the reaction from Ghana. DW correspondent Isaac Kaleji is in the Ghanaian capital, Accra. Isaac, good to see you.
Thank you, David.
So before we talk more about this historic vote at the UN, let's just look at what the resolution says. The resolution calls the transatlantic slave trade the gravest crime against humanity. It calls for UN member states to engage in dialogue on a full and formal apology and for reparations as a concrete step toward remedying historical wrongs. The resolution also urges the prompt and unhindered restitution of cultural items to their countries of origin. 123 countries voted in favor of the resolution. 3 voted against it, including the United States, and 52 countries abstained, including the UK and all of the European Union. So, Isaac, let's start, though, with Ghana. How are people there reacting to the news?
So a lot of people have been following this particular campaign for a long time, like 3 years ago. But this year, It has been intense, and people have been following, and a lot of celebrations in terms of people being happy about the fact that eventually their president was able to lead this campaign, and the UN has adopted this resolution. So the reaction has been positive. People have been happy about the development today.
And Isaac, Ghana has been pushing for this resolution for a while now. Tell us more about what's behind that.
So Ghana has been the epicenter really of this whole narrative about slavery because the country has several castles and forts, and many of them were used in the this slavery trade that took place many centuries ago. And across the country, in fact, we have two of the key castles, the Elmina Castle and also the Kepo Castles, where people always come to visit to see the devastation that took place because of slavery. And we've seen this edifice there and trying to remember exactly how our forefathers actually had to struggle and be taken along the oceans to other parts of the world as slaves. It's something that really keeps people thinking. And I think that this drive or campaign for reparative justice actually is anchored on that we see the remnants of this, and we think that something ought to be done, especially even with the issue of securing formal apology from countries that really carried out this particular activity, and in a way having some reparative justice for victims. So this has been ongoing for 3 years now, and eventually we've gotten to this point, driven of course by the passion of the current president who wanted to get this resolution adopted.
And Isaac, let's listen to what UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said about it.
Today we reflect on a deep betrayal of human dignity, the abduction of millions of Africans, stolen from families and communities they would never see again. I've often said the transatlantic slave trade was a crime against humanity that struck at the core of personhood, broke up families and devastated communities. I welcome the steps some countries are taking to apologize for their role in the evil of slavery and to join an honest dialogue about its lasting consequences.
Now, Isaac, the resolution calls for reparations for slavery. Are there any specifics on who should be paying reparations to whom?
Okay, so in the resolution that was actually sent to the UN by the Ghanaian or the African team, I should say, the reparation, the demand is that it should be paid by countries that undertook this practice and countries that also benefited from it. So like you mentioned in your introduction, the US, of course, benefited. So they obviously should also partake in paying, and some European countries really who took part in this slavery trade, they ought to pay the reparation. Now, the question has been to whom, and of course that has been one of the key issues why some countries like the US or even, for example, the UK decided not to vote in favor. They, according to the team, they're not asking for money to be paid to African countries or governments. No, they're asking that they should be channeled into a fund that obviously helps to correct some of the imbalances that we've had in the current world because of the slavery, and also to be able to ensure that people who really have been victims of this slavery can be able to heal again and be able to rebuild, get the tools, the skills they need to be economically empowered, so that we can bridge this disparity when it comes to economic fortunes across the world. So that is really the model that they are trying to propose. They are not asking that the money is to be given to government, but they want it to go towards targeted campaigns that helps to correct some of the anomalies that has taken place because of the slavery.
And it sounds like that there would have to be a lot of discussions about exactly what those reparations would look like. Isaac, thanks so much for talking to us.
Thank you.
Let's go to the U.S. now. Gerald Horne is a professor of history at the University of Houston. He's published dozens of books, many of them about slavery, including The Capital of Slavery, Washington, D.C., 1800 to 1865. Gerald, so good to have you with us. What's your reaction to this resolution being passed?
Well, I think it's a significant step forward. Certainly, it'll be quite useful in the United States of America because, as you probably know, there is an ongoing struggle for reparations to the descendants of enslaved Africans. You may also know that the administration in Washington, D.C., speaking of that, led by Mr. Trump, is unequivocally hostile to this question of reparations. And I would also like to give a note of celebration and victory, indeed, to the president of Ghana, Mr. Mahama, who is walking in the footsteps of the founding father of his West African nation, speaking of the late, great Kwame Nkrumah. And all around, I think it's a significant step forward.
Yeah, we're definitely going to be talking about reparations in just a second. What does this resolution mean on an emotional and symbolic level for the African diaspora, specifically for people whose ancestors were enslaved?
Well, I think it's quite profound. We in the United States oftentimes recognize that since the population of African descent is a distinct minority, perhaps 13 to 16% of the overall population, we've also and often needed international support and international validation in order to make a step forward. And I think that this resolution at the United Nations is precisely the kind of validation that we have needed in order to propel this movement for reparations, in fact.
So you're saying that basically African Americans, in a sense, needed Ghana to put this resolution forward?
Oh, absolutely. As you may know, the United States is known quite properly as a conservative country. You may also know that polls suggest that a significant percentage of the non-descendants of enslaved Africans are hostile to reparations. They are represented in Washington by Mr. Trump. And so in order to move the needle, we've needed this kind of international validation, which we've just received at the United Nations.
Now, over 50 countries did abstain in this vote, including the UK and the entire European Union. 3 countries, including the US, voted against the resolution. And one reason the US named is that calling slavery the gravest crime against humanity, it said, would create a hierarchy of crimes against humanity, essentially saying that enslavement is worse than other crimes against humanity, including murder and rape and torture. The US ambassador to the UN said, this is not a competition. What's your response to that?
Well, as you probably know, the African slave trade involved murder, rape, and torture. You may also know that the African slave trade lasted for hundreds of years, from the 1500s up until the late 19th century. You may also know that there are still reverberations and repercussions of the unlimited African slave trade in terms of the United States of America, in particular in terms of spiraling rates of incarceration, high rates of unemployment, spectacular rates of infant mortality and death for children. So I think that the resolution, in many ways, is right on point.
Gerald, I do want to play a few clips from the UN General Assembly debate on this resolution and get your response. The first one is Ghana's President John Dramani Mahama, clearly taking aim at the US and at Donald Trump.
Black history courses are being removed from school curricula. Schools are being mandated to stop teaching students about the truth of slavery, segregation, and racism in American history courses. Books about those topics are being banned in schools and public libraries. Museums, art centers, and other institutions whose budgets rely in any way on public funds are being prohibited from scheduling exhibitions and programs or from displaying materials promoting racial awareness or Black history. At the very least, they are slowly normalizing the erasure. They're slowly normalizing erasure.
That was Ghanaian President John Dramani Mahama. Now let's hear what the U.S. ambassador to the UN had to say.
The United States strongly objects to the cynical usage of historical wrongs as a leverage point in an attempt to reallocate modern resources to people and nations who are distantly related to the historical victims.
U.S. Ambassador Dan Negria speaking there. Gerald, what's your response to this idea that it's too late for reparations called for slavery?
Well, I disagree ferociously. In fact, as you may know, there is a principle of U.S. law which suggests that when there is a wrong, there should be a remedy. The wrong was the enslavement of millions. The remedy is reparations. And in any case, I was rather mystified by the fact that the U.S. ambassador spoke of countries receiving reparations when in his own backyard in New York City, there are millions of descendants of enslaved Africans who are living in desperate poverty as we speak, as direct relationship to the crime against humanity that was the African slave trade.
Now, you are also a lawyer, so I want to ask you about another criticism brought up by the U.S., and I'm quoting Ambassador Negria here. While we acknowledge the horrors of the past, the United States also does not recognize a legal right to reparations for historical wrongs that were not illegal under international law at the time when they occurred. Gerald, what do you think about that?
Well, I think that that's a questionable invocation of law. And I might also go a step forward to suggest that next in line for reparations, at least in North America, are the descendants of the indigenous population, the Native American population, who were subjected to genocide, which was the condition precedent to dragging Africans in chained across the ocean to work for free. And certainly it's rather disappointing, I must say, that many members of the European Union voted against this voted against this resolution concerning the African slave trade. Now, I know that they want to stay on the good side of Mr. Trump, but even having said that, I think that the ultimate and the utmost of cynicism is the vote of nations like Britain and Portugal and Spain, whose current standard of living and current modernity is attached and connected directly to the unlimited African slave trade.
Gerald, you've mentioned reparations several times now. What else do you think needs to happen at this point to address the wrongs of slavery and their ongoing impact on people today?
Well, I think that Mr. Mahama, the president of Ghana, laid out many other issues. For example, as he suggested in his riveting remarks, there's an ongoing campaign to not teach what happened during the time of slavery. And I speak to you as a person who teaches this issue. That is to say that it is said to be indoctrination if you talk about the horrors of slavery. Obviously, what's at play is the United States would like to portray itself as a shining city on the hill, and it's difficult to make that kind of distorted picture if teachers are teaching about the horrors of the African slave trade. And so certainly education, a dedicated campaign to educate people, not only in the United States, but I would insist globally, about the horrors of what befell Africa in particular.
Gerald, moving forward, how do you see this resolution impacting the conversation about slavery and its effects?
Well, I think it'll have significant impact. As you probably know, there is a chain of Black radio stations in the United States of America. I am certain and confident that this will be a subject of discussion on these radio stations. There are also numerous Black newspapers. Those newspapers will be printing columns, I assure you, about this resolution. And inevitably, what happens is that these kinds of issues spread from the Black press into the wider U.S. mainstream, and thereby it becomes a powerful tool for education.
Professor Gerald Horne, thank you so much for your time. What do you think? Is it time for nations to apologize for slavery and pay reparations? Let us know in the comments. And if you like this video, please hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already.
Hello, colleagues of the media, friends. Thank you for waiting and being patient for the vote to come through. I now want to call to the microphone the distinguished Foreign Minister of Ghana, Honorable Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa. Minister.
Well, Thank you very much, our friends from the media. Good afternoon. Today, the international community has taken a significant, considerate, and historic step forward by adopting this landmark resolution declaring the trafficking of enslaved Africans and the racialized chattel enslavement of Africans as the gravest crime against humanity. With the adoption of this resolution, Resolution A/80/L48, we have not simply passed a text, we have affirmed a truth. We have chosen remembrance over silence, dignity over erasure, and shared humanity over division. We have advanced the cause of justice, and we have done that so emphatically. Those who voted in favor, 123 member states of the United Nations. 52 abstained, and only 3 voted against. This is an emphatic victory for justice. And our ancestors, Africans, and all people of African descent are today honored that our humanity and our dignity have been restored. Let me, on behalf of the African Group, express our profound appreciation to all member states who supported this resolution. We wish to thank those who engaged in its consideration in a spirit of dialogue, reflection, and good faith. We acknowledge that views differed during this process, and we note the positions taken by delegations that were not in a position to support the resolution at this time. The adoption of this text is not an arrival at a destination, but rather a major step in our ongoing journey and collective conversation for reparatory justice. We remain committed to continued engagement with all member states in the shared spirit of cooperation. Yesterday, His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Ghana, who initiated this landmark resolution, talked about the importance of language, how it shapes our understanding of the past and our vision for the future. Today, through this resolution, the world has spoken with clarity and truth. We have affirmed that the trafficking of enslaved Africans and their racialized chattel enslavement is the gravest crime against humanity, a crime whose scale, structure, and enduring consequences demand recognition at the highest level of our shared global conscience so that we can move forward in healing and in preventing such a crime from ever happening again. This resolution is not about apportioning blame across generations or nations. It is not about reopening old wounds. It is about ensuring that those wounds are neither forgotten nor denied. It is about creating space for truth, for education, and for a more honest global conversation that allows us to move forward together with greater understanding. History, as we know, is rarely simple. It is layered, it is complex, and at times uncomfortable. This resolution does not deny that complexity. It does not ignore the many dimensions of historical experience. Rather, it recognizes that even within complexity, there are moments in history that stand apart, moments defined by their scale, their systemization, and their impact on humanity. To acknowledge this is not to diminish any other history. It is to deepen our collective moral awareness. What we have achieved today helps all of us in our renewed commitment to remembrance so that future generations inherit truth, not silence, to education so that history is taught with honesty and integrity, to dialogue so that differences in perspective become opportunities for understanding, and to cooperation so that we address the enduring legacies of history in ways that unite rather than divide. The resolution also opens the door for continued global engagement on reparatory justice, not as a narrow or transactional concept, but as a broader framework for healing, restoration, and partnership. It also calls for further actions within our respective states. We therefore urge every member state to consider carefully the actions it must take to ensure inclusive and good faith dialogue on reparatory justice. The work of justice does not end with remembrance. The racialized systems that adversely shaped our world must yield to a system that does not distinguish between our common humanity, and which seeks for the interests of all peoples in a fair, just, and equitable manner. Let me conclude with this reflection. We cannot change history, but we can change how we remember it. And in doing so, we can change what we carry forward. Today, the world has chosen to remember with purpose, justice, and equity. Let that purpose guide us toward a future that is more just, more inclusive, and more profoundly human. I would like to thank our negotiating team, staff of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the staff of our mission in New York, in Geneva, and in Addis Ababa. And I would like to thank especially our President, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, for his vision, his dynamism, his effectiveness, which the UN Secretary General acknowledged today in their bilateral engagement, and for his humanity. His guidance has been absolutely phenomenal in bringing us to this historic moment. Ghana, Africa, and all people of African descent, and indeed all people of the world with good conscience, will eternally be grateful to President Mahama for his leadership at this defining hour in global history. I thank you very much for your indulgence, and I shall now take your questions.
Those that voted against the resolution was the United States. Were you disappointed by that vote? And also, if you can comment on those that abstained, more than 50 nations. How do you feel about those? Thank you.
So I would like to comment on the reasons they gave. They sought to create the impression that the time for negotiations have been short. The President of Ghana served notice last year in September when he delivered his address at the 80th session of the General Assembly. Immediately thereafter, we put together a broad-based coalition, including experts, academics, researchers, historians from all regions of the world, and we commenced negotiations. In the history of the United Nations, this has been a resolution that has gone through so many rounds of consultations. And even the duration for this consultation, each consultation, the standard practice at the UN is that it takes 1.5 hours. We allocated 3 hours, twice the time, and had multiple rounds of negotiations. So there are some that to us, it is clear that even if we gave them 50 years, they would say that the time is not enough. But we can no longer wait. September, we will be commemorating 100 years since the last slavery was abolished. 100 years. And yet there has been no justice. A whole century. So we cannot keep waiting for those who do not want to reckon, who do not want to come to the table with urgency and with acknowledgement that this is a matter that can no longer be swept under the carpet. So we disagree with the notion that there was no time for negotiations. Secondly, the claim they have made that we are seeking to create a hierarchy of crimes. We have stated clearly that it is not about hierarchy. We are only speaking to a historical fact. Never in the history of mankind have we had such a systemic crime. We took over 3 centuries, more than 300 years, with its consequences still lingering unto this day, manifesting in racism, in structural inequality. So we are talking about the contextual framing of what has happened, not about ranking crimes. And we made that very clear. So we are clear in our minds that some are just deliberately stonewalling and introducing red herring. Exactly. But what is fundamental, which nobody can deny, is that more than 12.5 million people were forcibly removed from the continent. more than 3 million people died, were tossed into the transatlantic ocean, which is a mass grave site. And in our country, Ghana, we are currently, UNESCO has certified that, the country with the highest number of slave forts and castles. We are living witnesses on a daily basis when we go into those castles and forts and we see the door of no return. We break down. My daughter Indiva, on an excursion only last week, broke down and asked me, Daddy, what did we do wrong? And why has there been no justice? I had no answers for my 14-year-old daughter. So we live with these experiences on a daily basis, and we live with the structural consequences. And that is what this is about. All those other matters about ranking, about time, about more space for negotiations, we believe that they are just red herrings, and it is not a demonstration of good faith so far as the pursuit of justice in this matter is concerned.
One of the key reasons raised by the United States for which reason they are abstaining is the lack of clarity on who is the recipient of the reparatory justice. What is your response to that?
That is surprising because we have, in this resolution, talked about frameworks which will put in place that will take care of the consequences. We all know that the consequences of the transatlantic slave trade has been the lack of opportunity, discrimination, the degradation of people of color. So we have said, let's have frameworks that will serve as endowment funds to support education, to support empowerment, to support skills training, capital for entrepreneurs, and all of that. And we have made clear that African leaders or Caribbean leaders are not looking for money. It goes against our conscience to seek to profit from this. We don't want any payments made to us directly. We are talking about courses to deal with the structural inequalities. And we are also talking about the return of artifacts to the continent. It's all in the resolution. There are thousands of artifacts from Egypt all the way to the Ashanti Kingdom in Ghana. Those artifacts should not be returned on piecemeal as and when those who are in custody of those artifacts are in a good mood. So we have outlined what must be done and to whom these redress should be addressed to. So again, it is totally wrong for a claim to be made that there is no clarity about who benefits from reparatory justice. Okay.
Congratulations on the overwhelming victory in the General Assembly. I know you're busy, so I'll make it quick. What message does this resolution, this draft that has now been adopted, send to other people outside Africa right now that are fighting for reparatory justice?
This resolution sends a very clear message that the international community would no longer tolerate impunity, that the international community stands for justice, that the international community and our multilateral system we have erected, no matter how long it takes, the day of reckoning will come. And so all of us as leaders should be mindful of our actions and our policies, that once we violate the rights of others, once we engage in impunity, in acts of injustice, the day of reckoning will come. To me, that is a very, very profound message that the UN is sending to the world today. Let me take the last one.
Stefano Vaccara, Voce in New York. Did you have, in this process, did you have any contact with the African American leaders here in this country, especially in Congress? Did you have any contact?
Yes, we did. We did. I personally met with the Congressional Black Caucus. I met with the NAACP. I met with the NAN of which is led by Reverend Al Sharpton, and I am delighted to note that following our meetings, they all publicly endorsed this draft resolution. The Congressional Black Caucus actually wrote to the U.S. ambassador here to make sure that he votes in favor of this resolution. I'm sure he's really in trouble with the Congressional Black Caucus, 62 congressmen who urged him to vote positively, and he's defied them. I don't want to be in his shoes today. There was also a statement of endorsement yesterday from NAACP, and I also note that a lot of black members of parliament, particularly in the House of Commons, the MP Belle Ribeiro, she has also done a phenomenal job in mobilizing the House of Commons in support of this resolution. So we've had a very broad-based coalition, and we thank them very much for the support, the pressure that they all brought to bear. That is what has culminated in this victory. So it's a collective victory, and collectively we must all take credit for this victory. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. We'll have more opportunities to interact. Thank you.
President John Mahama has received overwhelming support from United Nations members to recognize the past transatlantic slave trade as a crime against humanity and the need for reparations for African nations. A resolution on the matter was introduced on Wednesday at the General Assembly in New York. It received 123 votes in favor, 3 votes against. They were Argentina, Israel, and the United States, while 52 countries, mostly European, including the UK, Portugal, and Spain, all abstained. This is when the vote actually took place.
Resolution A/80/L48 entitled Declaration of the Trafficking of Enslaved Africans and Racialized Chattel Enslavement of Africans as the Gravest Crime Against Humanity. Will all delegations confirm that their votes are accurately reflected on the screen?
All right, ladies, now pause the video here real quick. Just I want you to see the X, the yellow box of the X, one right there. Let me move my camera right here real quick so you can see all those countries that has the a yellow box with the little X, the black X. These are the countries that abstain. That means I don't want to be involved in this shit. You know what I'm saying, ladies and gents? So, just for you to guys have an idea, 52 countries. You know, I see Croatia, Cyprus, Chechnya, Germany, Georgia, Lithuania, Latvia, Norway, Oman, and so forth. Moving forward. Let's go here.
The voting has been completed. Please lock the machine.
As you can see, 52 abstentions right there.
No.
The result of the vote. The result of the vote is as follows. In favor, 123. Against, 3. Abstentions, 52. Therefore, draft resolution A/80/L48 is adopted.
Folks, as we said, the 3 countries that actually voted against this resolution were the United States, Argentina, and Israel. The countries that actually abstained from the vote: Albania, Andorra, Armenia, Australia, Austria, Belgium, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Bulgaria, Cambodia, Canada, Croatia, Cyprus, Czechia, Denmark, Estonia, Fiji, Finland, France, Georgia, Germany, Greece, Hungary, Iceland, Ireland, Italy, Japan, Latvia, Liechtenstein, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Malta, Monaco, Montenegro, the Netherlands, New Zealand, North Macau, Norway, Oman, Palau, Paraguay, Poland, Portugal, Romania, San Marino, Sao Tome, Slovakia, Slovenia, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland, as well as Ukraine and the United Kingdom. They all abstained. There were 52 total abstentions, 3 against, and 122, of course, the votes that actually were for this numbered 123. Ghana's President Mahama spoke about the transatlantic slave trade earlier today.
Your Excellency, Secretary General of the UN, Excellencies, permanent representatives, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, progress is made in little steps. It is a forward motion towards something better, and changes often come incrementally. Today marks the International Day of Remembrance of the victims of slavery and the transatlantic slave trade. It is a day on which we honor the memory of the approximately 13 million African men, women, and children who were enslaved over the course of several centuries. We remember them through articles, oral histories, through broadcast programs, books, music, visits to museums, monuments, and memorials such as the Ark of Return, located right here at the Visitors Plaza of the United Nations headquarters. Through these activities, we do more than remember. We document and educate, we gain greater perspective, we find the delicate balance of learning from history so that we do not repeat it while leaving our pain behind. In doing so, we begin to heal individually within our immediate communities and also within the global community. This day of remembrance did not happen by accident. In 2006, our global community gathered here, just as we have done today, and resolved to designate the 25th of March of the following year a day of remembrance. It marked significant progress. Then the following year, in 2007, we decided to make the event an annual one so that the 25th March of every year would be the International Day of Remembrance of the victims of slavery and the transatlantic slave trade. That marked an additional step in our forward motion. And so it's indeed fortuitous to be here today, 2 decades later, addressing the General Assembly on behalf of the African Group regarding the draft resolution entitled Declaration of the Trafficking of Enslaved Africans and Racialized Chattel Enslavement of Africans as the Gravest Crime Against Humanity. In September last year, at the 80th session of the General Assembly, I stood in this exact place and served notice that Ghana will move a motion to declare the transatlantic slave trade the gravest crime against humanity. This current draft resolution is a result of months of consultation and consensus building by continental bodies, nations, experts, scholars, and jurists, with the sole aim of achieving a united front and grounding the final outcome in truth, compassion, and moral conscience, remembrance, education, and dialogue. So today we come together in solemn solidarity to affirm truth and pursue a route to healing and reparative justice. The adoption of this resolution serves as a safeguard against forgetting. It also challenges the enduring scars of slavery. Madam President, let me conclude with two significant quotes by two great leaders of history, one of them white and one of them black. The former President of the United States of America, Theodore Roosevelt, said, and I quote, "With a great moral issue involved, neutrality does not serve righteousness. For to be neutral between right and wrong is to serve wrong." Again, civil rights leader Dr. Martin Luther King also reminds us, and I quote, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice." We've traveled this long road, each step guided by a desire to be better and to do better. Each step bringing us closer to the kind of world we would want to leave for our children. And so, delegates, on this beautiful day in March, we're called to stand on the right side of history. Let it be recorded that when history beckoned, we did what was right for the memory of the millions who suffered the indignity of the slave trade and those who continue to suffer racial discrimination. Let our vote on this resolution restore their dignity and humanity.
Now, yesterday, Ghana's president did not hold back criticizing the United States and Donald Trump for their attack on Black history, Black authors, and Black books.
Here in the United States, Black history courses are being removed from school curricula. Schools are being mandated to stop teaching students about the truth of slavery, segregation, and racism in American history courses. Books about those topics are being banned in schools and public libraries. Museums, art centers, and other institutions whose budgets rely in any way on public funds are being prohibited from scheduling exhibitions and programs or from displaying materials promoting racial awareness or Black history. Much like the law that was put in place to regulate the punishment of the enslaved in Barbados, these policies are becoming a template for other governments as well as some private institutions. At the very least, they are slowly normalizing the erasure. They are slowly normalizing erasure.
Now, folks, before today's vote by the United Nations, Ghana's president led a solemn wreath-laying ceremony at the African Burial Ground National Monument in New York City, paying tribute to the nearly 20,000 Africans who were enslaved and buried there. The poignant gesture marked Ghana's commemoration of the International Day of Remembrance of the Victims of Slavery and the Transatlantic Slave Trade. It was part of a broader push for reparatory justice. New York City President Zoran Mamdani, he spoke at that ceremony as well.
First, thank you to the President of the Republic of Ghana, John Dramani Mahama, for hosting today's wreath laying. Ghana is a nation that holds deep meaning for me. My father gave me the middle name Kwame after Kwame Nkrumah, the first president of Ghana, a leader who fought for freedom. And that longing of freedom unites all of humanity across geography and history. It is that longing for freedom and the sacrifices made by so many to win it that we are here today to commemorate. And I want to acknowledge a number of leaders that are also here with us. It was a pleasure to be preceded by Reverend Al Sharpton, as well as members of the President's team and representatives from across the region, including the Caribbean. I also am here with a number of leaders from our administration. We have our Commissioner, Afia Atta Mensah, who is here with us. Commissioner Ana Maria Archia from the Office of International Affairs. We have our public advocate, Jumani Williams, who is here with us, as well as State Senator James Sanders, Assemblymember Al Taylor, so many other leaders, including our outgoing commissioner as well. And we are here in many ways because nearly 400 years ago, the first enslaved people arrived at the port of New York. 22 souls, likely from Angola, were originally aboard a Portuguese ship bound for sugar plantations in Cartagena before the Dutch intercepted and enslaved them once more, this time under the Dutch West India Company. And so began a shameful history of slavery here in our city, one that is just as much a part of our story as the Revolutionary War battles that were fought in Brooklyn or the bridges and skyscrapers that defied any precedent. According to New Amsterdam's 1665 tax list, 12% of the residents of this city at the time were slaveholders. By the mid-1700s, New York City was home to the most enslaved people outside of the South, until the Act for the Gradual Abolition of Slavery in 1799. Even then, freedom was partial and often cruelly withheld. None of the enslaved New Yorkers who helped to build Wall Street ever benefited from the enormous wealth that it created. And the dignity and security granted to so many of our earliest settlers was denied to those of African descent, even those fortunate enough to be deemed free. Land deeds once granted were rescinded, the franchise of voting so often out of reach. Our city and its incredible spirit, wealth, and global significance is inextricably intertwined with the horrific history of the transatlantic slave trade. One need look no further for proof than the very ground upon which we stand today, which was at one time the largest cemetery of black New Yorkers, many of whom were enslaved. It was only when construction began on a 34-story federal building on this site in 1991 that our city paused to reckon with what was here. I am grateful to the community members, historians, archaeologists, all those who helped to reveal what lay beneath our streets, to draw attention to the history of our city. And as was said earlier, the tension that also lies at the heart of it. That history must never be forgotten. And when we tell it, let us tell it in its totality. For we know the history of black New Yorkers is not just one of oppression. It is one of resistance, of organizing, of fighting for freedom, among so much else. Let us tell the stories of black New Yorkers who fought in the slave revolt of 1712, demanding dignity only 1 year after the first slave market in New York City was erected at the foot of Wall Street. Let us tell the story of the community of Weeksville, founded in 1838, just 11 years after New York State outlawed slavery, and how it would grow into a self-sustaining, safe haven for escaped and freed slaves with its own schools, churches, and newspapers. And let us tell the story of the many who continue to resist the long shadow of slavery and discrimination. From the thousands of men, women, and children who participated in the silent march on Fifth Avenue in 1917, to the activists and archivists who have continued to honor the legacies of those whose names would otherwise be lost to time. Today, as we gather to remember the victims of slavery and the transatlantic slave trade, let us recommit to the work of building a New York City where every New Yorker can live a life of dignity and freedom that so many other New Yorkers were so cruelly denied, that so many sacrificed so much to obtain. And in a city that is proud to celebrate the intertwined nature of black history and New York City history, let us also ensure that this is a city where the writing of black history can continue in the weeks and months and years to come. May we honor the memory of those that we have lost as we build a New York City worthy of its struggles.
All right, folks, we have Johanna LeBlanc back. Johanna, you were saying that it's a resolution, but the reality is it is important to see the folks who are on record and where they stand in terms of other countries.
No, absolutely. I think a part of this process, part of the reason that President Mahama introduced this resolution is because he wanted to elevate the conversation politically and certainly diplomatically. So I think it's a good step in the right direction. However, what President Mahama is asking for in terms of reparations is nothing unprecedented, right? Other groups have received reparations. You have the Japanese, you have the Holocaust survivors, And now African Americans or people of African descent want reparations for the harm that had been done to them. So I think it's a good step in the right direction. But however, in order for the UN to actually do something about this, it has to go through the UN Security Council. Otherwise, this is merely a resolution that will just elevate the conversation politically and diplomatically.
Well, and we know that the United States is one of several countries that has a permanent veto on the UN Security Council, and so that stops anything from moving forward.
Absolutely. And under this administration, it was expected that the Trump administration was not recognize this resolution, was not going to vote in favor of it, because as we know, this administration is anti-anything that it considers to be DEI or anything that it considers to be rewriting, bringing back history or setting the record straight. All right. So it was expected. So I think this is the beginning of the process. We're not going to the end of it today through this resolution. It's going to take some time. Perhaps under the next administration, the Mahama administration will lobby the United States to actually recognize this and bring it to the UN Security Council. But you also have to get China, which China actually voted to recognize this, as well as Russia, right? So there are a number of other ones who are a member of the UN Security Council who actually abstained from voting, whose votes will be vital to moving this process forward. I certainly applaud President Mahama for doing this. But at the same token, though, what does that mean, right? So if we're going to acknowledge this to be one of the worst things that have happened in history, an atrocity, what does that mean for people of African descent, perhaps who want to return back to the continent, right? Like, for example, if you wanted to move to Ghana, the citizenship process costs roughly $2,500, right? Whereas if you're a Jew who would like to return back to Israel, the process is actually, in many cases, free, right? To come back home. So I think the continent, collectively, the African Union, should have a better system in place to better accommodate people of African descent who wish perhaps to return back home. Secondly, I think one of the worst things that happened to people of African descent, besides slavery, was the colonization of our minds, right? And until we train ourselves in the way we see ourselves, the way we see the continent, and the way we think about the world, I think no matter what kind of reparations that we have, as a group of people, it will be incredibly difficult to advance.
All right, Jahan LeBlanc, we certainly appreciate you joining us from Africa. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
All right, folks, bringing to my panel, Dr. Zachary Kirk, educator and content creator from Atlanta, Rebecca Carruthers, President and CEO, Fair Election Center out of D.C., Patrick Schaefer, political philosopher and public scholar out of Chicago. Glad to have all three of you here. Zachary, I'll start with you. Listen, when you look at this here, again, does it carry weight? No. Is it the question of seeing where countries stand? Yes. Listen, you talk about Argentina, they have a serious issue with racism. Listen, a lot of the Nazis fled Germany after World War II, and they decamped to Argentina. Yeah. And so you have Israel and the United States, the three countries voting no. And so let's talk about that, but also those 52 countries that abstained. A lot of European folks abstained.
It's criminal. It's embarrassing. We live in a nation that was built on the backs of our ancestors, enslaved people. And the least the least this country can do, not what they should do, which is reparations, not what they should do, which is ensure fair and adequate and equal opportunity to every single American citizen, because that's so far beyond the understanding of those that we, the American people, have put in power. But the least they can do is recognize the atrocities. This was the simplest, easiest thing this nation could have done to make a small step towards atonement for all of us who are those who remain of the evil that they did to our ancestors, and they couldn't even do that. This is extremely disappointing, and this is something that I'm so thankful that you're bringing to the forefront, and that needs to be echoed by your audience. We just share this and share this broadly so that our people know what our country continues to do to us every single day.
It was the least they could do. It did carry any weight whatsoever, Rebecca, but it's abundantly clear where they stand.
You know, Roland, I had so many emotions watching that because this is one of the few experiences that I've ever had in life where I've seen another country stand up for me. And the reason why I say it like that, being a Black American whose family has been in this country for centuries, I don't have the luxury like some of my friends who are first, second, third generation in this country, where if it goes down in this country, they know their country of recent origin will stand up and say something. They know that that country's president or premier or ambassador is going to talk to this government about how their people are being treated in this country. But when you are a Black American in this country, you don't get that. And so to even see Ghana stand up and advocate for Black Americans in that way is so powerful, because we don't have that. We don't get that, because as far as people are concerned, we didn't have a history. As far as some people are concerned, Black Americans didn't have a history before 1619, and that simply is not true. So that was very powerful. But it also makes me think about whenever I go to Europe, I think about the last time I was in Portugal. I took a African tour of Portugal tour, and it was led by several Africans. And what was interesting about that tour, they really pointed out how across Portugal, they don't talk about their role in the slave trade. Right. So there's many Portuguese citizens who have no idea the role that Portugal played in kicking off the transatlantic slave trade. And when I've done similar tours in France, it's a cognitive dissonance. So am I surprised that those European nations who primarily benefited from the transatlantic slave trade, aka the greatest human trafficking in human history, does it surprise me that they had nothing to say? No, but guess what? We're coming for our money.
Absolutely. Patrick, your thoughts?
I think it's pretty on brand for the United States. They've been pretty consistent. I think that the mere fact that we're talking about reparations and redress and repair is because that slavery has an afterlife, and there's a logic to that afterlife, that what we see is that if there was any rupture in slavery, it was just legal. But the logic and the system of slavery still persists. Had it not persist, then we would not be talking about the inequalities that we experience, that we need reparations for our history. How is history behind us if the structure of that history is still present with us? And so I think that it is a great conversation, and I'm more interested in what does material justice look like within this context.
Absolutely. And so we'll certainly see what is next, but we appreciate the Ghanaian president moving forth with this and getting these countries on the record.
And ladies and gents, first of all, before I give my 2 cents, I definitely gotta give credit and once again to DW News, United Nations YouTube channel, and Roland Martin Unfiltered, ladies and for these 3 videos that you just watched with me. So I was eating my empanada, drink my wine, watching the video with you, and I was on the side was making notes. Okay, so first couple things that I want to talk about. Let's start with the 3 countries that voted no, vote against. Okay, United States, Israel, and Argentina. Number one, United States, I definitely was not expecting the United States to vote in favor because based on the current administration that we have, right? And this also is a stamp to prove to these idiots, black people that still supporting Trump, is right there in your face that this man is a racist. He doesn't give a damn about you, but you still there support this idiot. All right. Second of all, Israel is in the pocket of the United States. Definitely do not vote in favor. And Argentina, that if I'm not mistaken, got 40. I don't know if it was. I think it was $40 million that the Argentina president got from Trump. I think was at the end of 2025 or the beginning of 2026. But he got $40 million from Trump. Meanwhile, you and I, where's the Dodge check? Where is all this check that's supposed to come to the American citizens? The only people that saw some check come from the Trump administration was the TSA that finally, when they got their money back, they got some check. I don't know if it was everybody. As a matter of fact, I have a good friend of mine that works for TSA. I'm going to call him and ask him this question. But I know there was in the media there, on the news showing that some of TSA people got some, I think it was $10,000 check. I don't know, something like that. But they got some money from the Trump administration. Other than that, nobody else has got it. Jack. All right? So now, when it comes to the 52 countries that abstained their votes, I was, as you saw, I paused the video, list some countries there. But one country that was really, really, really disappointed was Ukraine. Because there were a lot of black people that stood for Ukraine on the war, on its war against Russia. Now, for the Ukraine, I don't know if the president of Ukraine knew about this vote. I don't know. So, I'm not going to speculate too much, but I'm really, really disappointed with that Ukraine vote. All right? Now, as far what should be done, in my personal opinion, in my way of thinking. So, definitely, I don't think that putting money on bank accounts. Okay, hold on. Hold that thought. So, I separate in two groups. Okay, first of all, as for reparation, who should pay for this money? Right? Number one, I say the primary and secondary. The primary, who are the primary countries? The countries that were directly involved in the slave trade, such as Portugal, Spain, England, the Dutch were involved, and whoever else were there coming to the continent of Africa doing the trades or whatever and snatching black people out of the country, not their home, the village or whatever you want to call it. All right? Secondary are the countries that, even though they were not directly involved primarily, but they were the beneficiaries of the slave trade, such as the United States, Brazil, the Caribbeans, so they brought it to the Caribbean. Let me fix that. I don't think the Caribbeans were involved. They were brought up there. But basically, those countries that were beneficial, like I said, the United States and Brazil, so they should be a part of give you some funds. Now, as far as the fund is concerned, let's go. I don't think, and I don't think it would work, is just deposit some money on bank accounts of all black people. Because, as you know, and I'll be 100% with my own community, there's a bunch of knuckleheads on my community as black people in the United States and Brazil and the Caribbean, you know. So I think the right thing to do and the correct thing to do is have educational funds. First of all these countries like that were directly invaded, you know, such as Ghana and Angola and Togo and all African countries today, definitely a lot of people got ripped, you know, got snatched from their country. Those main countries, the primary ones, should give some funds to build school and trades, universities, schools, and trade schools. So the people, the native people, should be, you know, lift, and so they can develop some knowledge and technology, so to develop their own countries. And second of all, like I say, the secondary is supposed to have funds available for African descendants to go to universities, trade schools, and so forth. That's my personal opinion, because I think it would be beneficial better, because if you have a free money, so now if you don't want to go to school, that's on you. If you don't want to better yourself, it's on you. But the money is available for you right there, so you would not have excuse me, student loans and all that. Now, for all the haters, you can kiss my black ass. You know, because for 400 years or more, you know, we paid the price. We built the United States and all the countries. So for your white ass to be the beneficiary, directly or indirectly, of what your ancestors did. So I don't want to hear. I do not want to hear. Now, if you're a white person, if you're not successful in this country, it sounds like a personal problem to me, because you had all the benefits available for you. Don't believe me? Let me just give an example of the World War II. Now the GI Bill that was available for veterans. You have opportunity to buy a house, to get your education. Meanwhile, the black soldiers that sacrificed their lives and fortunately did not die when in the wars, when they came back to the United States, all this were denied to them. So I don't want to hear. So many benefits that came to African Americans and our black people to sacrifice, to participate on it, and they got into it since the Revolutionary War, 12 wars the United States got involved with. Black people, the Native Americans, the Puerto Ricans, you know, they got involved. And what they got back? Almost nothing. Nothing or almost nothing. So, and now there's the stupid ass war in Iran that they raised the age for 42. You know, there's no drug, marijuana charge, that all this dropped. So I want to see, you know what, if I was a recruiter, I would go to mega country right now. Alabama, Mississippi, all this. The recruiters should be driving the neighborhoods, collecting all these people, because they're for Trump. That's Trump's war. So go ahead, homeboy, sign up and go fight your cult leader war. Go ahead and sign it up. They should be lined up, long lines of all red states right now. All red counties that vote for Trump, they should be lined up and sign up. And no minority should be involved in this shit. Get some white people shit, let them get signed up, and let them die for the orange coat member. That's all I'm gonna say. Alright, ladies and gents. So I hope you like this video, ladies and gents. If you like this video, please click on the like button, subscribe, and share this video with at least 5 people you know. I appreciate your support. I appreciate your time with me. So please be safe, be kind, and be blessed. and do the best what you can do with what you got. Salute. And I see you next Saturday with another awesome podcast episode. Holla!